Hello, today we're going to talk about how you can teach drawing if you're not really good at drawing. Now, most of us art teachers have some artistic talent, and I have plenty, but we're not necessarily good at everything, and we tend to gravitate towards teaching what we're good at. But to give the students a well-rounded education, we really need to give them a little bit of everything. So when I say I can't draw, people who are not particularly artistic will say, "Oh, you're great at drawing." But in fact, if you take a look at my work, it's all very flat. I'm good at cartooning, but I can't make anything look like a realistic three-dimensional form. It's something that really bothered me when I was younger. Not that I wasn't good at it, but I didn't really have any interest in it or interest in getting good at it. And so I felt like I really couldn't pursue an art career because of the drawing. And we all have students we know who are reluctant artists, who are unenthusiastic about art class because they're not good at drawing, and they think that's what you need to be a good artist. And a driving force in my teaching is to make sure that everyone gets to experiment with all sorts of media: collage, sculpture, printing, painting, weaving, needlework. These are my strengths. I want to make students who are not particularly confident in drawing or interested in drawing to make sure that they know that they're artists too. My curriculum focuses on the elements of art and principles of design, and as a tab teacher, I'm really driving home those 8 studio habits of mind. And this in and of itself gives students a good balanced art education. However, you have to teach drawing. It's a fundamental skill, and even if they don't get good at it, everyone should have a baseline understanding of drawing technique. What these lessons are going to be concentrated on is moving away from drawing from the imagination to having students actually look closely and study what they are drawing so they can produce something that is more realistic looking. So I'm going to go over 4 lessons, all of which I do in the 4th grade, and they're all about drawing what you see, not just what you imagine. I really have to drive home this point, that the secret to drawing is looking. So all of these projects are going to be encouraging the students to look closely and draw what they see. Up to this point, they've really been encouraged just to use their imagination. But now we're going to get into some more controlled techniques. So the looking is very important. So everything that they are drawing in the first 2 lessons is going to be projected on the screen. So it is very important that everyone is facing forward. Now, this should seem obvious, but in your classroom setup, it is likely that you have some students who are facing the other way. And the problem that I have all the time is that these students do not want to turn their whole bodies around. They want to keep turning around, looking, turning back and looking at their paper, turning and looking at the screen, turning and back at their paper. So the number one thing you have to do is rearrange people in the room so that everyone is facing forward as much as you can. Some sideways is going to work. Everybody's sitting forward, and if you don't have enough table space for this, you can use clipboards. Now, I still have a problem with the clipboards because I will turn them around and hand them a clipboard, and they will still turn their bodies backwards and put the clipboards on the tabletop. So you may have to ask around and find some students who are confident working with the clipboard on their lap. So I have another video specifically on this gesture drawing exercise. So you can look to that for more details, but I'm just going to go over it very briefly here. You're going to need clipboards, paper, use cheap paper. Professional artists and, maybe middle school and even high school, they use charcoal for this kind of really quick drawing. I hate the way charcoal feels, so I never use it. But you don't want to use anything too fine because you want them to draw big and rough. So I don't use charcoal. I do use the thicker, like beginning pencils for kids. These My Pals are great. A crayon will work well. You don't want to give them any erasers at this point, and these drawings are going to be timed. A sharp, pointy pencil with an eraser is going to make them draw too small and too much detail. We want big and rough. So we're going to talk about what is a gesture. Does anyone know what a gesture is? This is a gesture. And this is a gesture. And this is a gesture. And usually when I'm saying this, I'm moving around very boldly in the room, waving my hands, kicking my feet, and that really gets their attention. So it brings attention to the fact that we're going to be talking about movement. We're going to be making dynamic pictures. We're going to be concentrating on lines and shapes. And we're not going to worry about any color or any detail. We're not going to put faces on anybody, and we're not going to color anything in. And you do not have an eraser. We are not going to erase anything. You're not going to turn these in. Don't worry about making a mistake. We're just going to draw fast and strong, and we're going to draw pictures of people making gestures. I show them these two videos. They both show the really rough, loose style that I'm looking for in the gesture drawing. And I think it's a good idea to show them two, because then they're different. They don't think that they have to imitate exactly how I do it or how the first person does it. And they're both pretty short videos. So that gives them the idea of what we're going to be doing. And then I go through this slideshow. And like I said, I have another video that is just on this slideshow. So each one of these pictures is going to be up for 3 minutes, and I help them through it. I talk about what to look for in each picture, about how the runner's body is angled forward, about how that dancer's body is stretched all the way out, and you can see those legs are pointing in a straight line, or the football player, how he's not straight and pointing at all. He is all full of bulk, and he's all twisted. That can be really challenging to do a twisted body like that. So they tend to have a little bit of nerves at first, worried about doing it right, and then of course they'll giggle, at any pictures of girls, in their tank tops. But once we get going, they really get into it, and they're going to go through a lot of paper, so you want to have a nice stack of that newsprint or some other cheap paper on the table. You want to focus on dynamic movement and energy. Next week, we're going to look at contour drawing. Again, I have a video just on contour drawing that has all the slides of the different objects we do for contour drawing. And what is contour? You may have had art classes in high school or more advanced that when you did the contour drawing, you might have done exercises where you're not allowed to pick up your pencil. You might have done exercises of blind contour drawing where you're not allowed to look at your paper. We're not doing any of that. These kids are just 9 and they are just starting. So we want this to be as easy as possible. And we're going to talk about the contour is the outside edges. And that in this project, we're only going to be looking at lines and shapes. We're not going to have any color. We're not going to have any detail. Of course, they just did the gesture last week, so they're going to be more ready for this. Again, you're going to set up the room the same way, use the same materials. I show this video from YouTube. It does a good job of showing exactly the kind of technique that I'm looking for. She's very soothing, easy to follow, and it also has that emphasis I'm looking for on looking at what you're drawing. Don't think about what you think a hand holding a pencil looks like. Look at the actual hand. Again, we've got to make sure everybody is looking forward. Nobody's twisting around backwards. The secret to success is looking. So again, on that other video, I have the slideshow that contains a number of different examples, and we have timed about 3 minutes drawing each one. And in that other video, I talk about what we're looking for in each one of these drawings. On the bicycle, I tell them about what part they should draw first. They always want to draw the wheels first. The trick is to draw that triangle in the middle first. Pikachu. Has anyone ever drawn Pikachu before? Have you ever seen Pikachu before? And of course, most everybody has. And we talk about how if you practice drawing something over and over and over again, you'll get really good at it. The balloons is a really good one, and I tell them at the beginning, this one's tricky, so I'm going to let you do it, and then we're going to talk about it. And I would say about 3/4 of the class will draw those balloons as 3 separate ovals without them touching. And so then I say, okay, so let's take a look. Are these balloons touching each other? Everybody says yes. Now I said, I want you to look at your balloons. Are your balloons touching each other? Oh, no. Okay, so let's go back and take a look. So the first one we want to draw is the black one. And I talk them through drawing what you can really see, not just what you think 3 balloons would look like, but what these 3 balloons look like. And at the end of this class, some people take their drawings home, some people throw them away. But both of these classes are going to be high energy, fun classes. And both of those weeks of preparation has been bringing us to this assignment, which we usually work on for 2 weeks. And this is drawing from photographs. You want to pick high interest subjects, and you want to pick things that are isolated objects. I've just downloaded all of these pictures from the internet. Just search clip art of different things that you think kids would be interested in. The isolated objects really works well here because we're not worried about backgrounds. We're not worried about lighting. We're not worrying about perspective or depth. They can just look at the one isolated object and really concentrate on looking at the line, looking at the shape. And this time we are adding details and we are adding color. Here are some examples of my student work. We use crayons, pencils, color sticks. I don't allow them to use marker for this. And when you find someone who is changing details, changing colors, maybe putting in their own background, this is a wonderful time to talk about the artist being the person who decides. Anytime you're drawing from a reference photo or from a still life, the artist gets to take what they want from that resource, add what they want, leave out what they want, and change what they want. Now let's take a break. I usually do this at the beginning of the year, so at this point, these kids have been working on drawing seriously for 4 weeks. It's been fun, but at this point, everybody's had enough drawing for a while. So we do our other projects. I usually do collage next since it's so different. So after you've taken some time, done some other projects, then we can come back to our next project in drawing. It's going to be still life, but before we look at still life, we're going to talk about value. I show this value song from Scratch Garden. It's not the best because this song is really all about color mixing, and we're not really going to be color mixing. We're just going to be changing the value mostly by the amount of pressure we're using, but I can't find anything else that's a good fun song for value. So we watch the Scratch Garden song, and then we do an exercise where we try to create value with different art materials. Drawing pencils, colored pencils, crayons, color sticks, and for this exercise only, I let them use markers. Could also throw in pastels or oil pastels, but those materials don't really work together with these other materials. And when they're doing their actual drawing, I want them to have access to all these different materials so they can use both pencil and crayon or color sticks on the drawing. So here they are doing a little worksheet I have. What they're doing is trying to make light, medium, and dark value. First with a regular pencil, then with a colored pencil, then with a crayon, and this last row of boxes he's working on is with a marker. And they're going to find, much easier than me telling them, but just letting them do it, that they can't make value with marker. Now, of course, there are techniques like stippling and hatching that you can get into when they're a little more advanced. And of course, if the marker's drying out, it makes value. But I want them to see that it's important which tool they choose, and to encourage them that on any drawing they can combine pencils for some things, crayons for other things, and markers for some things as well, although for this assignment we'll not be using markers. After they've finished this chart, then we just do some coloring. And for this coloring, I want you to create different values. You can combine the pencils and crayons and the color sticks. For this part of the assignment, you can use the markers, but I want light, medium, and dark on each one of these little doodles. Again, this is just an introduction. We're not looking for perfection. We just want to expose them to these ideas of these are elements that are involved in drawing. Just like we've already looked at lines and shapes, now these are aspects of color that we're looking at. So now we're ready to move on to the still life assignment, which we do for 2 weeks. And I want to tell you, we are not doing fruit or flowers or vases or any of the cliched old world still life drawings. They are not interested. We want high interest objects. You want them to be durable because a lot of 9-year-olds are going to be handling them. And again, you want them individual objects in your setup. So they're not putting together a tableau. Everyone is just drawing one thing at a time. Now, I have a room full of great things. These action figures are a huge hit. Now, I've been collecting these things for years, but you can easily just look around your kitchen, your home, your school. Art supplies and art tools are a great thing to draw. Shoes, hats. But you definitely want to choose things that they're actually going to be interested in looking at and reproducing. And again, the secret to drawing is looking. I really like to have a lot of hard-edged objects with distinct lines and colors. A 4th grade boy who is interested in manga is going to be a lot more interested in getting the points of those shoulders and the lines on those shoulders correct than he is going to be in drawing a rose correctly. Again, we use the same tools, pencils, crayons, color sticks, but this time you want to give them good erasers. Don't have them use those crappy pencil erasers because they'll smear all over the place. Give them good materials. Good materials is going to make good results. This is all about building up their confidence that they can draw. Also have a set of supports, but you could just as easily use book stands or cardboard boxes, but you're going to want something to help support these things. If it is something that it needs to stand up, often they can't stand up on their own, especially at a table full of kids knocking the table. So it's good to have something that their figure can lean against. It's also important to be able to elevate a small item to about their eye level. If you're going to be drawing the side of the car, you don't want to be looking down at the top of the car because we're drawing what you see. We really need to place the object in their sight line. It also helps to mark that this is the thing the person is drawing. This is not just something laying on the table. And for this, you definitely need to lay ground rules because the kids will go nuts when I present them with 2 carts full of toys and really cool objects. They, of course, want to handle things. They pick them up, they put them down, they want to argue, they want to change their mind. And I don't have a problem with changing your mind, but you need to handle everything carefully. At least one of my items gets broken every year. So lay those ground rules. You can only have 1 object per person. But I want to draw, yes, you can, but only 1 at a time. So you can't have Batman and Spider-Man and Superman. You can have 1. And also only 1 person per object. Sometimes I'll find 3 people crowded around all trying to draw the same Spider-Man. What this leads to is each one of them continually adjusting Spider-Man so that it's the way they want. Hands off. Whoever's got the Spider-Man right now, it's his Spider-Man. Don't touch it. However he has it is the way it stays. And when he's done, he needs to put it back in the area for everyone to share. And if it devolves into too much playing, especially with, let's say, Matchbox cars that are rolling, I will pick the item for them. I can see that this is going to be too much of a distraction for this table, so let me give you something else instead. So the drawback of having high interest items is that it can lead to a little too much excitement, but in the end, I think it's really worth it to have things that the students are engaged in wanting to make a good picture of. And this is an excellent time to talk about craftsmanship. Because they're excited, some of the students are going to want to go just as fast as they can, especially since we started learning by having these 3 minutes drills. But for this, we're really going to concentrate, again, on looking, on working carefully, looking at the lines, the shapes, the colors, the detail. Most students will draw maybe 3 things in a class. I'm not making them spend 50 minutes on one drawing. But if they're whipping through them too quickly, I'll really address, okay, what I want you to do is pick 1 thing, sit down, and let's really focus on this. If they need help, I will often make a light pencil line with just the basic contour. Sometimes if they're really stuck, that will get them started. So here is a chicken made by a folk artist in Kentucky that I have had for years. And here are some chickens that my students have made over the last 7 years. So you can see the chicken is ideal. It's sturdy. It can take the wear and tear of so much handling from the kids. It's got very distinct edges. It's got bright colors. It's kind of funny. So this is a fun thing to draw. And again, the artist decides. They don't have to do the same colors. They can add details. They can add backgrounds if they want. In the case of this cat, this is actually a crocheted cat in multiple colors. And all of these artists did a good job of drawing what they saw, but then they took it further and added the details that they wanted. And this is an important part of still life, that even though you are looking at something, you are still an artist and you still get to decide what changes you want to make in color, background, size, details. So that wraps up my 4th grade drawing lessons. The 2 drawing exercises, gesture and contour, each 1 week, and then the drawing from photographs that takes 2 weeks, and the still life that takes 2 weeks. However, I have experimented with the symmetry drawings, and I think this is really something that's more middle school appropriate. But 1 year I did let my 4th graders have a go at it, and I think they did a really good job. I think this is better left to when you have had some time to really talk about facial proportions, which we haven't done. And if I did this again in 4th or 5th grade, I would concentrate on animal faces instead. I think that they would be easier, cleaner lines, less detail. So I'd really like to try this one, but there's only so many weeks in a year and I always run out of time. So I hope you found this helpful. Works for us. Remember to like and subscribe. The more you interact, whether that's likes, subscribes, or comments, the more likely that it's going to show up in your feed.